Hey, it's Vanessa, your spiritual auntie. I just wanted to expand on some discussion that I was a part of yesterday as a guest of the Black Mental Health Matters show, where I was joined by Rihanna, Naomi, and Marcia as we talked about the spiritual and emotional impacts of chronic health conditions. And a point that was eloquently explained by Marcia and Naomi was that we experience these stages of transition throughout our life, yet the only time spirituality really comes to play is, near our death or around the time of our death from our physical selves. And how there are other points in our life where we experience something pretty similar to death, where we're in a state of transition. We are, coming more into our true selves and shedding aspects of our identity, and just really continuing, our evolution, and how we can also experience grief during those times, even though, the transition is ultimately for our good. We can grieve who we used to be, and the experiences that we used to have. And I think one huge transition that doesn't get talked about enough, from the lens of grief, is when you become a parent. I know I was completely shocked and taken away just by the amount of grief that I felt compared to the joy and just happiness that I expected to feel based on, sort of what is pushed to us through media, through culture, in terms of like becoming a parent is this wondrous, experience full of joy. And it is, but in the beginning, especially, and throughout, you do experience grief, because it's such a huge life change for you, and it will change who you are down to your core. And I remember my son being 3 days old, and I was upstairs in my room by myself, sitting on my bed, just in tears, just absolutely beside myself, crying, like a very ugly cry, and just feeling just tremendous guilt, because I'm like, what's wrong with me? I'm supposed to be, happy in the baby moon, and, all of that. I knew more about sort of the physiological changes that I was going through and the mental changes. I understand like what pregnancy does to your body, and birth, and all of that, but I really was not quite ready for the existential crisis that I experienced, where I was like, what have I done to my life? I, just in such a short amount of time, I just changed my life upside down on itself. And I immediately just like felt this wave of just like despair and just sadness, because I was no longer going to be able to be that person that I was before, that I worked so hard to become the, independent, compassionate, available, helpful, person who, travels and can just do whatever they want whenever they want. And could mother from afar with, like my nieces and nephews in my life. And so I was just like so riddled with guilt. I had, nothing prepared me for that. I mean, I even did the whole pre-birth classes and stuff, and they do a fantastic job really readying you for the mental and physical aspects of pregnancy, childbirth, and delivery, and that postpartum period. But nothing really, again, prepared me for that complete existential crisis that I ended up experiencing, day 3. And I wasn't really equipped to, work through it at that time, because I wasn't making the connection that this is my spiritual health. You know, I'm following everything from like a mental and physical health perspective, but you know, I had lost sight to all the tools that I had from my spiritual care because I just, again, just didn't think it was at play here. I know that might sound like, well, duh, but, you know, it just wasn't mentioned. So therefore I didn't make the connection myself. So, you know, those initial days, weeks, and months were very difficult. I did find times, I think one of the things that got me through it was, you know, those moments where I did remember, like, you know what, take this time, take a deep breath, do not feel guilt and shame around resting and needing to be away from the baby. And, you know, because there's all sorts of physiological, mental, spiritual things that are going on. I mean, if you are chest feeding, or even not, you're grappling with this awareness now that your body is like kind of not your own anymore for a while. So there's this, like, that whole aspect, as well as the sleep deprivation, which really, really, really is huge, plays like a huge role in terms of your overall well-being, whether you're able to rest or not. And that was something that was very difficult for me because, again, it was physiological. You're still adjusting from like hormonal changes. It's psychological. You feel like you have to be, you know, ready at any given moment to respond to this baby, you know, that you are responsible for their well-being and stuff. And so that, you know, if you're somebody who already has feelings of anxiety and maybe, you know, and like internalized perfectionism, that can weigh very heavily on you. And so, you know, sleep was something that was elusive. And when I did have time to rest, it was like my brain was just in overdrive because I was like, I do want to rest, but then I also want to daydream. I also want to just look at my phone for a little bit. I also want to watch TV. I also want to read. I also want to, like, you know, there was so much that I wanted to get done that I really felt guilt about like resting, or felt like maybe more of like I deserve these things too. So, you know, I say all of that to say that I think becoming a parent needs to be talked about in a more balanced way. I understand why people don't, you know, talk about all of the hardships that come with it. One, you don't want to come off as that negative person because our society, I think, is so skewed towards the notion that, like, it's better, toxic positivity is what I call it, right? Where we go so far to the end of being positive that it's like becomes taboo to talk about anything real that isn't necessarily deemed as positive, whether that's neutral or negative. But I really want to encourage us to talk more honestly and transparently about the hardships that come with becoming a parent, and the impact to our spiritual selves as well, because there is a lot of information out there about mental and the physiological changes. So yeah, I was just like randomly, I was cleaning and I'm like, you know what, I think that would just be a really good story to share with folks, and making a connection in terms of the very real impacts to spiritual and emotional health when you're experiencing something that's more medical, whether that be a chronic condition or, you know, with pregnancy is for a fixed amount of time, although it does alter you forever. But yeah, I would love to hear any thoughts that any of you who are watching have around this. And as always, thank you for listening. And until next time, take care.